keeping other people in the dark or withholding information deliberately is one of the narcissist's absolute favorite tactics, because when other people are second guessing themselves or their reality, they become easier to control and manipulate. Confusion and doubt distract the chosen target and limit their chances of ever finding out who and what they are dealing with. And this unsuspecting person is usually the very last person to know or believe that they are being set up by someone who uses others to get what it is that they want. Narcissists will simply refuse to answer some questions that are put to them in the getting to know each other stage of the relationship, and they will deliberately ignore and evade questions or comments and railroad the conversation to a totally different topic, or even become passive aggressive and joke that the inquirer is being too nosy. The narcissist may casually mention how they once had to dump a stalkerish ex, and although it might sound like an innocent sounding story, it is done in an attempt to make the inquirer back off from asking questions, and B, somehow feel bad for invading the narcissist's privacy, and C, it is giving them a warning that this will also happen to them if they continue to ask this type of question. And the other reason is because they deflect they could be married or in a relationship already. You have to remember that an open and respectful two-way conversation is not something that needs to be earned or given that is after a set amount of time has passed. So if this is not happening in the early stages of the relationship, take it as an enormous red flag. And underneath all of that flattery and the impressive stories is a person who is being secretive and dishonest, and this behavior will absolutely escalate and get worse. It's also a cause for serious concern if you find you are blaming yourself for these communication blocks or feeling confused because all of a sudden the usual way of getting to know someone via the use of asking questions is no longer working or even okay. So those who comply or go along with this secrecy, even begrudgingly, they send a clear signal to the narcissist that they are an ideal mate and guaranteed to be a good source of narcissistic supply. And in short, they are likely to be kept on by the narcissist or at least put into the lineup or the harem. So we don't have to be experts in NPD to know something is just off about someone, and we have our intuition and our gut feelings to guide us, and all we need to do is listen and never ever dismiss. So what if you're co-parenting and the narcissist is keeping you in the dark? The early stages, or the early co-parenting stage, otherwise known as fresh hell, offers bountiful information withholding opportunities for the narcissist, as the co-playing field is riddled with man traps and will be covered in more detail in future videos. But here is just one example. Not giving the other parent the actual time or a generous time frame with regard to the dropping off or picking up of their children. And the narcissist will, whenever they get pushed to give an actual time, they'll use the phrase lunch time or breakfast time instead of the clock time. And in the early days of my co-parenting with a narcissist who eventually completely alienated me, I would give my child's father the benefit of the doubt and even make excuses for his antics. And maybe he just doesn't know what time yet he is arriving. Maybe his family has always used this term and it's just the norm, but then he'll prove me wrong by continuing to do it after I made it clear that it was confusing and for everyone and generally unhelpful. Keeping me in the dark awarded him the right to turn up unannounced and create even more chaos, which is nothing new but the usual narcissist antics, and had now taken on he had already taken on this insidious tone because children, they always get roped into these messes, and it took way too many years to realize that I had been playing into it each and every time, and the fact that my child was involved in the mayhem only made him do it all of the more, not less, as one might imagine. Adopting a gray rock approach was not too successful for me at first, as my ego would protest and loudly become overly emotional, thinking to myself, you cannot let him get away with this stuff. You have to install boundaries, and there have to be consequences for his actions. And I came to find out that the gray rock technique only works if emotions are left out of it, because a narcissist's ultimate favorite reward comes from seeing another person lose their shit. And I came to realize that boundaries cannot fix any interactions with a narcissist, and found that boundaries working alongside detachment lead to a greater success rate of keeping sane around the narcissist than by boundary setting alone. And by detachment, I mean setting an intention to detach completely from the outcome, and the concept that, say, energy flows where attention goes seemed to apply in this situation, because after emotionally detaching from the outcome, I became less exhausted despite his best gaslighting efforts. And one evening, as I paced around, racking my brains, trying to figure out what time I should have my son ready for his arrival to prevent all hell being let loose, I decided to emotionally attach and let go of my attachment to the outcome. And I detached from this thinking about his likely next move, detached from the worry of how it would affect my child, detached from focusing on how he will react if, say, my son wasn't ready, or no matter how many times he blasted the car horn outside my home. And this mammoth sounding task took seconds, not years, and it felt like a 60-ton bag of spiky rocks had been lifted off of my back. And once this heaviness has been lifted, it popped into my head that I was able to work with the plan and work around this. And it was a time of my own making, and a reasonable one that worked well for myself and my child. And setting the intention to detach and adjusting my internal language proved to be key in managing my particular situation and then future ones. So, the comings and goings and the details of these arrangements, I assured myself that the details are things that we can all learn to manage in a practical way, because that's all they are, details.